Shabbat Shalom. Today we are celebrating Tu B'Shavat. In Kohelet 3, we read these familiar words. For everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. Long before being green or ecology was thought of, in April of 1872, recognizing the importance of trees and the planting of trees, the USA established Arbor Day and designated it as a holiday, a time to plant, nurture, and celebrate trees. But long before that, another tree-centered holiday had already been promoting arboreal appreciation for many centuries. Tu B'Shavat is an ancient Jewish holiday known as the New Year of the Trees. The original role within the yearly cycle given by God was to celebrate the age of fruit trees, that is, trees that produced annual crops. Today, it has a much broader ecological tone, earning it nicknames like Jewish Arbor Day and even Jewish Earth Day. This poem, written by an unknown author, is beautifully descriptive. Smells of rain on sidewalks, of sun soaking up water droplets and evaporating them into the wind, of atmospheric changes, visions of budding leaves, here and there enlivening the winterscape which begins its fade into springtide. A glimpse of spring, a glimpse of happiness, playfulness, and joy, peeking through the unfolding leaves of the flowering fruit trees. Memories of a Jerusalem hillside, like floating yards and yards of Swiss-dotted fabric, blooming into a multitude of blossoming almond trees. With the tithing of the trees and the flowing of the sap, with the lengthening of days, comes the celebration of life. Beautifully descriptive. Perhaps at this time of year here in the UK, it's difficult for us to think ahead to the blossoms on the trees, but they will be coming soon enough. Tu B'Shavat marks one of our 4 New Years, 4 in the Hebrew calendar. Can you name them all? Essentially, God's time is an unceasing flow which has no beginning or ending, consistent with His nature. For human beings and for all of creation, meaning has been imposed upon time with arbitrary divisions and markers, years, months, weeks, days, minutes, seconds, even nanoseconds. Until the 20th century, when clocks became more common, only days and then perhaps hours were measured. In 19th century Britain, before standardized railway time, when people had different times in different areas, mail coaches arriving in towns served as mobile timekeepers, sharing the official city time, often adjusted from Greenwich Mean Time, with the locals as they brought in mail. Passing the time of day occurred as people gathered to get the time and news from literal walking time tellers, some of whom charged for their services of telling the time. In the 20th century, one could check the time over the phone with the speaking clock. Units of time serve as measures for human activity in education, commerce, leisure, agriculture, and even faith. Jewish time grew from God's imposition of order on the primeval chaos in the beginning. First, God separated light from darkness, creating day and night, and then, as a reflection of his cycle of creation and rest, the work week was differentiated from Shabbat. Later, God mandated that we mark the new moon of Nisan as the first of the year, establishing a monthly and then yearly cycles. The Jewish calendar has served to demarcate both holiday observances and numerous time-bound obligations, ensuring that commandments are completed at their appointed times. The 4 Jewish New Years: the 1st of Tishrei, the 15th of Shavat, the 1st of Nisan, and the 1st of Elul. Since we are required by God to contribute a tenth of the year's produce, we needed to know exactly when the current agricultural year began and when it ended. Tu B'Shavat, the 15th day of Shavat, of a 30-day Jewish month that generally lasts from mid-January to mid-February. Tu B'Shavat jumps around a bit on the secular calendar, from February 8th in 2012 to January 26th in 2013, and in February 1st this year. Both religious and secular honor the holiday by planting trees in Israel through JNF, something that we've been doing since the late 19th century. Why do we celebrate Tu B'Shavat? The original purpose of Tu B'Shavat, as previously mentioned, was to calculate the age of fruit trees, helping us to comply with the biblical edict God gave in Vayikra, chapter 19. And when you come into the land and have planted all manner of trees for food, then you shall count the fruit thereof as forbidden for 3 years. It shall not be eaten. In the 4th year, all the fruit shall be holy, for giving praise unto Adonai. But in the 5th year, you may eat of the fruit, that it may yield unto you a rich increase and bounty. I am the Lord your God. Fruit is off limits during a tree's first 4 years. So, Tu B'Shavat helped our people calculate by standardizing tree planting times. Each tree is considered to have aged 1 year as of Tu B'Shavat. So, if a tree was planted on Shavat 14, it would begin its 2nd year the next day. Not very wise, really. But if you planted a tree 2 days later on Shavat 16th, it won't reach its 2nd year until the next Tu B'Shavat. Since growers were to donate a tenth of their fruit to God, that is to support the Kohanim, the holiday was also a sort of tax day for trees. How have we celebrated Tu B'Shavat? Well, we've done it in a variety of ways. Of course, living outside the land, it was more difficult to do anything related to the biblical command. But in the 1500s, Kabbalists began holding a Seder on Tu B'Shavat. This was a way of involving the tree fruits native to Israel, modeled after the Pesach Seder. Tu B'Shavat Seders are now common, focusing on the 7 species of Israeli crops that are listed in Devarim 8:8: wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, and dates, and date honey. This tradition has encouraged some Jewish environmental groups to use Tu B'Shavat to promote sustainable, locally grown food. A U.S.-based group, Chazan, offers tips on sustainable seders and on finding local 7-species options if fresh 7-species fruit isn't available. Chazan suggests raisins, dried figs and dates, honey, jam, and wine, some of which we use. Since trees are what Tu B'Shavat is all about, the most salient way to celebrate is simply to plant more trees. A variety of groups in Israel and elsewhere sponsor local tree planting or afforestation projects, and many families in Israel plant a new tree on their property or join volunteer efforts on public land. Tu B'Shavat is a reminder to us of our connection with all of creation and to that which God has given into our care, but especially to the land of Israel. We have a symbiotic relationship with trees, which we often tend to forget. Humans and trees are dependent on one another. Tu B'Shavat should serve to encourage each of us to think about our relationship with all that God created and with God as our creator. The 7 species remind us not only of creation itself, but of God's goodness to us. Shivat Haminim, the 7 types of fruits and grains named in the Torah, the land of wheat, barley, grapevines, figs, and pomegranates, a land of oil, olives, and date honey. In ancient days, these were the main products of the land of Israel. They were the staples of our diet. They were also important in ancient Judaism because one of the temple tithes commanded by God derived from these 7 foods and was called Bikurim, which means first fruits. It is traditional to celebrate Tu B'Shavat by eating these 7 species, which we will be doing today at our Seder. If you can join us, that's great. If you can't, well, perhaps you can add the 7 species to your day in one way or another, or to your week. The verse which reads, Ki ha'adam etz has-adeh, compares human life to a tree in the field. A child in the first few years of life is very much like a seed. Seeds often look very much alike, and it's only during growth that we see changes, as with a child in his or her early years, beginning to develop into the person, the adult he or she will eventually become. Born with a unique personality and character, a child is most impressionable during his or her early years. It's during these years that a child is affected most by surroundings and environment. We read in the scriptures, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Those early years must feature teaching from parents in what is moral, in what is right, in what is appropriate, and what is godly, what God requires of us. If the child does not acquire such knowledge from his parents, there will be no self-discipline as the child becomes a preteen, a teen, and finally an adult. A seed is most vulnerable before it has begun to sprout or grow roots. Not yet grounded, the tiny seed is at the mercy of its surroundings. An overabundance of rain can drown the seed. Too little water may dry it out to the point where it cannot sprout, whereas a fully grown tree would at most become slightly withered by such conditions. A scratch on a fully grown tree would have little impact, while a scratched seed may develop unevenly, the scratch or the blemish on it having a lasting effect on how the tree grows. A scratched seed may result in a plant that produces mutated fruit or no fruit at all. As long as the seed is young and undeveloped, it is more susceptible to weather and also to many other conditions. It also has the most potential for growth at this stage. As the seed takes root and begins to grow and develop, its immunity strengthens. With time, the seed is able to weather changes and disruptions in its environment. In the same way, with each passing year, a child becomes slightly more immune to outside influences and more able to deal with changes and even conflicts. According to Torah, we are not permitted to eat the fruit from a tree until the tree has been growing for 3 full years. This mitzvah is known as Orla, and it corresponds to the custom of giving a boy his first haircut on his 3rd birthday, when he may also begin wearing a kippah. At this age, a girl may begin to light Shabbat candles with her mother's help. Children are often introduced to cheder at this age as well. 3 years marks a clear developmental milestone for trees and for children alike. A seed, a sapling, even a fully grown tree cannot survive indefinitely without water. This is why prayer for rain is so important within Judaism. A freshly planted seed will, of course, be most affected by lack of water. It simply won't grow. A sapling will wither away after a short time without water. A tree will live longer, but will turn brown, dry up, and eventually die with no water source. Torah is compared to water. As a tree or any plant needs water to survive, to thrive, and to grow and develop, so all human beings need Torah. Verses like, "With joy we shall draw water from the wells of salvation," remind us that we cannot survive without contact with the scriptures. Rav Yeshua was speaking of Torah when he said, "Man cannot live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." All trees in whatever stage of development require water. Likewise, every human being needs Torah to thrive and grow. Thus, it is important to expose our children to the Holy Scriptures from a very early age. And memorization is a particularly good tool. I still remember the first verses that my parents taught me. I learned Tehillim 23, but also quite a few other scriptures, which have stayed with me through life, as I've learned other scriptures, of course, along the way. But those early scriptures, they meant a great deal to me, as my parents taught them to me, most of them, before I was 3. In preparation for bar and bat mitzvah, children should study the scriptures and should become directly involved in living out a Torah lifestyle, beginning with lighting candles on Erev Shabbat, participating in Pesach Sederim, helping with the building of the Sukkah. All actions and involving visual aids which help us to remember the commandments of God. As a child advances, he or she should experience the different levels of understanding of the scriptures, peeling away the layers of knowledge as one peels an onion. Rav Shaul declared, "When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put childish ways behind me." He would have been speaking specifically of his commitment at the age of 13 to live out Torah for himself. As an adult, maintaining Torah study and active involvement in the synagogue supports one's personal relationship with God. This relationship is based in God's love for those he created, which culminated in Yeshua's sacrifice for us. Study of the scriptures lends a higher purpose and a stronger focus to one's daily life. We all know how easy it can be to lose sight of the truly important things in life, surrounded as we are by so many influences and demands that run counter to the commandments of God. We encounter these negative but sometimes pleasurable influences on a daily basis. In fact, they bombard us. A strong biblical Jewish foundation can help counter such confusion, encouraging young people and adults to follow God rather than the trends of the day. During the winter months, most plant life looks bleak and dead. Battered by high winds or heavy rains or covered in layers of snow and ice, its growth seems to have come to an abrupt halt. We look around us and we see everything looking, well, dead. But despite appearances, it is during this period that trees and plants are gathering strength for the upcoming spring. Similarly, at various times in our lives, we all face challenges that result in periods of seeming stagnation or even decline. Deeply affected by such trials that we might encounter, we may seem to stop growing and developing, even seeming to wither and weaken. Difficult as these times may be, it is from such hardships and even incapacities that we gain spiritual strength and empowerment because we look to Hashem. These periods of apparent decline actually foster the ability to give encouragement to and nurture others. As a tree's annual period of hibernation prepares it to produce fruit in the coming months, in the same way, times of seeming stagnation can lead to periods of remarkable growth and productivity in our lives. Each of us must be encouraged and directed, pruned and nourished to become the tree God has created us to be. Through prayer, study of the scriptures, deepening understanding, we become productive, living fruitful lives, offering nurture to others. The prophet Yirmiyahu wrote, "Here is what Adonai says, a curse on the person who trusts in human beings, who relies on merely human strength, whose heart turns away from Adonai. He will be like a tamarisk in the Arava, the desert. When relief comes, it's unaffected, for it lives in the sun-baked desert, in salty, uninhabited land. Blessed is the one who trusts in Adonai. Adonai will be his or her security. Like a tree planted near water, it spreads out its roots by the river. It doesn't notice when heat comes. Its foliage is luxuriant. It is not anxious in a year of drought, but keeps on yielding fruit. In Tehillim 1, verse 3, we read, Be like a tree firmly planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in the season, and its leaf does not wither, and in whatever it does, it prospers. This is what we seek for ourselves, for our children, for our people, for our future, until Mashiach returns. May it be soon. May we be faithful to seek after that which makes us more prolific, abundant, and productive. And may God be honored with the new growth and the fruitfulness in each of our lives and in our community. May God bless you with these thoughts in the week ahead. Shabbat Shalom.